It's time for a reality check.
We're here to deconstruct health and fitness trends and provide tangible advice so you can become 1% better with each choice starting today. Our topic today is dieting success with addition and not subtraction. And honestly, this is the basis of our coaching in general. And I think it's honestly opposite take on most generic diets that are out there, because typically diets are, you can't have this, you got to cut carbs, you got to cut all these things out, right? So we tend to associate dieting with restriction, and we like to do the opposite. And we like to focus on addition and things that we can add to your life to make you more successful and also make you feel better as a human. So Jess, you want to take it away?
All righty. So the first thing, we want you guys to add stuff. Obviously, Jill just said that. We want you to add the good stuff as opposed to taking away things. Now, there's two different components to this. One is like a psychological thing of basically your brain is fighting itself if your actions and your beliefs aren't aligning. So if I'm saying like, I can't have a cookie, I can't have carbs, I can't have this or that, you're literally going to be thinking about it all the time. It's like telling a little kid they can't touch a button and they're like, oh, I wonder what happens if I touch that button. Like there's this level of cognitive dissonance where your brain is like, oh, I don't know, I'm not supposed to have that thing. So there's this psychological aspect of it that can be so freeing when you're like, oh, permission to have it, or I can choose to or not to have it. Like sometimes I choose not to have the loaded cheese fries, even though I want them. Like I want them from a taste standpoint, but I also know they don't align with my health goals right now, and it's not going to make me feel good. And my stomach might hurt after. So I change my language and say, no, thanks. I don't want that. I don't say I can't have that right now. I want a diet, like maybe other times I do choose to have it and I do want it. But so there's that psychological side of if we can add the good stuff, we're going to be focused on the things we're adding and our attention is going to be shifted. So we're not obsessing and worrying about things we're not supposed to have. Second, there's a biological aspect of it too. So adding whole real foods to specifically increase our protein and our fiber can be really, really powerful in making our cravings go down. So they can actually stimulate GLP-1 production. I know a lot of people are eager to hop on the Ozempic and semaglutide bandwagon because they're like, oh, sweet, it gets rid of my hunger. I'm going to take this shot. Not thinking about, hey, there are real foods you can eat and you can get plenty of nutrients and you can feel better, not have side effects just by adding your protein and adding fiber to your diet. So there's that. The hunger cues will go down. There is the aspect of physical fullness. Like I could eat 1 or 2 baked potatoes and be really full. I could eat a ton more potatoes in the form of potato chips when it's saturated with fat and processed oils. So add real foods, guys. Naturally, your calories are going to go down. Your cravings for junk are going to go down without even trying.
Mm-hmm. You're just going to be more satisfied physically, mentally, everything. And tagging on to Jess's explanation of the psychological component of it, there is our brains are always going to lean towards status quo, right? Our comfort level and what we're doing. And when we go through these restrictive diets, there's always some level of ambivalence, right? Because we want that result and we want to see changes physically and we want to lose weight. And we want to be confident, feel good, right? But we still have that like little devil on our shoulder that's like, but I love cookies, but I deserve this, right? So you have this like tag back and forth in your brain, whereas you're creating, like Jess said, the kid in the candy shop, like it's a novelty for you to have a cookie or a slice of cake or a piece of candy from the office, break room, whatever, right? But when you take that away, that novelty, it doesn't feel so special and cool anymore. I remember we had a client who came to us and she said, listen, I have pizza night every Friday night with my family. That needs to stay if I'm going to sign up for this. I was like, cool, sounds good, right? She eventually, after a few weeks, said, I skipped pizza night last night and I felt really good that Saturday morning for the first time. So I don't think I'm going to do it every Friday, but I think I'm going to do it sometimes. How cool is that? Can you imagine if I had told her you can't have, Friday night pizza anymore? She would have probably stuck to it for a few weeks and then probably ate a whole pizza to herself one day. Whereas we kind of took the opposite approach of like adding nutrients around in her life and adding strength training. Pizza night on Friday night is not an earth-shattering thing and should not be shamed or taken away from her. She decided on her own that I feel better when I don't do those things. And the novelty wore off for her because it wasn't restricted anymore. So that's really one of the biggest components of addition, not subtraction, when it comes to dieting, is the psychological sustainability of it long term, because nobody's going to take sushi away from me forever, and nobody's going to take chocolate chip cookies away from me forever. Because what, I can have them whenever I want, so I don't feel the need to have them every day, where it's quite the opposite if you can't have it and you're craving them desperately, right? So it's important to work them into your diet and not take things away. And, like Jess mentioned, if you're adding more nutrient dense foods, those sugar cravings and late night cravings and those things that you think are inherently wrong with you, they're just because your body's not getting enough nutrients, what it needs, right? So like she mentioned, when we add fiber and we add protein, you don't have a sugar addiction. You're just not getting enough protein, nutrients, fiber, calories overall. It's the same with, a strong appetite and binges and all of that. I went through that too. And that can get to a place where there's a hormone imbalance or something like leptin resistance, but more protein alone will offset a lot of those struggles that you're experiencing.
There were so many different ideas that I had as you were saying that. I'm like, oh, we could talk about this stuff for 2 hours. There's so many different behavioral changes that people make as a trickle down effect from saying, I'm allowed to enjoy time and food with my family. Like there's more value to food than just calories and your weight, guys. Like that time with your kids when they want to have ice cream is important. Do we do it every day? Heck no. But but yeah, turning that down because you're on a diet, it's not healthy for you internally, but it's also not a good example that we want to be setting for our kids so that they're someday in the same cycle you're in 30 years from now, So, so anyway, going back to the fullness piece, I think it's kind of spectacular, actually. We start all of our clients with what we call a reverse diet, basically adapting their bodies to higher and higher calories to ease them out of the diets that they have been in, to adapt their metabolisms higher. I like to call it a muscle building phase because we're always having them strength train along with that. But anyway, a lot of times when we start our clients with this, we have them track their foods for a little bit first before they even start coaching with us so that we know what their baseline is. And then we go based on that. I've had clients a month in and they're losing weight and they're like, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm losing weight and I'm eating more food. And I'm like, okay, time out. Like some clients really were dieting a lot before they started. Other people think that they were at low calories because they were eating so much processed stuff. When we set goals for them to add the good stuff, they're like, wow, this is crazy. I'm eating so much food and I'm full all the time and I'm losing weight. And I'm like, you're losing weight probably because you were actually eating more calories than you thought you were before, but you were just hungry all the time because it was junk or it was like processed, I'll put quote unquote health food that is low carb, low fat, low sugar, whatever, but it doesn't have the micronutrients. It doesn't have the fruits and vegetables and or minerals and vitamins and stuff that fruits and vegetables and whole food plants and meats would have. So we start adding those things in and these people are full and they're losing weight and they're amazed. And it's like, look, Angie had a cookie last night. Angie had pizza with your family. But like just adding the good stuff can work wonders for getting your calories under control without being on a diet.
Yeah. And not to mention, when you improve your food quality, you're getting enough calories, you're getting in enough protein, you're going to get better and faster results in the gym. And I explain this often that being in the gym and working out is never a waste of time, right? You're moving your body and that's good and healthy and all of those things. But if you're actually looking for physique or body composition changes, you can kind of waste your time in the gym if you aren't getting enough protein or calories in, or you're going to get way less benefit out of it by not getting enough of those nutrients in. And also, you're just not going to feel as good, as strong, as energized, and all of those things. So it's really important, like Jess said, to really focus on things in moderation. And, I feel like 80-20 is a little bit, it's a loose guideline, right? Nobody's going to follow 80-20 perfectly, and not every dish in your day will even be perfect. One might be heavier on carbs or fats or whatever. I have a really heavy protein and fat breakfast and tend to have my carbs in the middle of the day because that's when I like to work out, right? So you do not in any way, shape, or form, based on this conversation, need to worry about the timing of your nutrient intake. It's really about just having a balance of all of the nutrients and not feeling like you need to restrict any certain food or food group or macronutrient in general. It's just getting a balance of all of them. So One of the examples I talk about a lot is, people come to me and say, I'm having a hard time getting protein. And I'm like, well, tell me what you eat for breakfast. And they're like, well, I have one egg and 2 slices of toast. And I'm like, so have 4, right? Like add some egg whites, have breakfast sausage with it. You want waffles? Great. Make sure you have some protein on the side. You want pizza for dinner? Great. Have a protein shake or add some chicken breast or add some sausage,
add fruit.
right? Yeah.
Have some baby carrots on the side. Like just add some colorful, nutrient dense foods.
Yeah. And I'm not saying every time you eat pizza, you need to eat a chicken breast or a carrot, right? Like sometimes it's just time to like indulge and live in the moment, and that's okay too. But if you're most of the time thinking about how to balance your meal throughout the day, then most of the time you're going to feel good and you're going to get better results in the long run anyway.
Yeah. And we have a lot of clients too who come to us and they tell us that they have a binge eating problem. And we'll have them write their foods down, take a food log or journal, and we'll look at it after a couple of weeks. And it's like, man, it's crazy the amount of times when the person who claims to have a binge eating problem has not eaten until noon that day. And it's like, well, hey, maybe you don't have a binge eating problem. Maybe you're just hungry. And we start adding in breakfast every single day. And suddenly those incidences of binge eating late at night go away because their body was just craving food. So sometimes just adding something like that can really be a simple fix.
And also, not to mention, people say, well, I'm not hungry, so I don't eat breakfast. And I'm like, no, it's the opposite, right? You're not hungry, or I don't eat breakfast because I'm not hungry, and whatever the opposite is, you know what I mean?
You're not hungry because you're not eating breakfast. Your body has adapted like, to the inputs that...
it adapted to you not eating breakfast. So sometimes I'll tell people, okay, we're going to eat 30 minutes earlier, an hour earlier than normal, and we might actually have to work our way back up. But especially if you suspect hormone imbalances or metabolic issues or high cortisol, insulin resistance, any of those things, it's so important to make sure that you are not taking things away. You're adding fiber and adding protein and adding nutrients, because the nutrients and getting enough calories, it's what's going to actually support the healing internally of your metabolism and your hormones. And we want to make sure that we aren't just trying to meet like a certain quota, that we're actually just giving our body enough of what it needs to. And honestly, you're only going to make fat loss more difficult for yourself. One, biologically, going into that survival mode and not getting enough, but also psychologically, you're over restricting and you're increasing your hunger hormones, which is going to make compliance that much more difficult too. Where compliance is easy if you're dieting on 1900 calories and you have tons of flexibility in your diet and nothing is off limits, right? So I think it's important that we think about it from that perspective too, that we're not saying, do whatever you want. We're just saying, have a balance of everything.
So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit, but sticking on the topic of adding things, we add other stuff for our clients too. So it's not just about nutrients and food. We are really taking the concepts of like basic behavioral change. So think of like atomic habits or the compound effect. We want our clients to add a little bit of good stuff every single day until it becomes their new norm. We're not dumping this all on them at once. If somebody's eating 50 grams of protein a day, I might start them at 80. Okay. I'm not starting them at 120 grams, So anyway, apply that to everything I'm about to say. We are also adding these things. We're adding sleep and whatever recovery means for that person. We are adding muscle. We're not focusing on weight loss and subtracting from the scale right away. We are focusing on adding good muscle tissue because that will help you keep fat off long term. We are adding steps and daily movement. We are adding water. So again, how frequently have you been out at a bar and somebody is like, oh, I just need to have something in my hand? If you replace that drink with a water, you're less likely to have as many beers, right? The same thing goes for your food and for these other behaviors, okay? So yeah, to top it off, all the things that we want to add, if you guys want to start this right now, you can keep both of us have habit journals that we keep where every day I just check off 5 to 10 things. In whatever, every month I look over it and I decide what are the things I really want to grow in this month. These are the things I'm going to focus on. Here's the things you guys can check off every single day if you want to start this concept. Protein, add fiber, hopefully in the form of real food, fruits, vegetables, produce, plants, potatoes, rice, stuff like that. Add water, add steps, add strength or muscle, and add sleep and good sleep quality.
And if you guys notice, there's likely going to be a theme at the end of every podcast when we wrap up. on the things that you should be focusing on to make a lifestyle change, because I'm pretty sure that our last episode ended just about the same way and talks in terms of talking about what things we need to add to our day to get better results and feel better overall. It's always going to come back to the foundation and to the basics. And we're given reality checks here, right? We are here to give it to you straight and give you the basic, most simple and most applicable advice that we can to you guys. You can take everything that we're doing in here, or, we have a free Facebook group. Everything that we do in there, you can absolutely take all of this information and run like hell with it. You can go change your whole life. I had somebody message me on TikTok recently, and she's like, hey, I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, but I binged all your TikToks, wrote everything down, took your advice, and I'm down 20 pounds on my own. And I'm like, amazing.
Yes, that's why we do this.
Yeah. And I'm like, so you can. And obviously we're here to coach and hold people accountable and give them support, especially through something like a reverse diet, because it can be super intimidating. But if you start to approach your next diet or your next, please not diet, whatever you want to call it, think about what can I add versus what do I need to take away first. And it's going to shift your whole perspective. And honestly, it's going to make compliance so much easier. So if you feel overwhelmed with dieting advice and don't know where to start, first focus on what you can add to improve your compliance and your quality of life before taking things away that aren't even necessary to take away in the first place for your success anyway. Anything else on your end? Did we cover it?
No, I like this. I feel like maybe we should end every episode with a commitment to action. Like every call with a client that I have, at the end of the call, I'm like, okay, here's the plan. This is what you're telling me you want to do, right? Cool. We're following up on it. Maybe as you guys are listening to these episodes, take one thing away and say like, okay, what's one little thing I can do today, right now? What's one healthy choice I can make that was different from a choice I made yesterday? Because that's the stuff that adds up over time, guys. You don't need to follow some perfectly curated diet plan or fitness routine. Like the little things add up. So just take one thing from this, go implement it right now. Because after a year, it can change your life.
Yes. And then message us on social media and tell us what thing you changed so we can hear about it.
Yeah.
So. Okay, guys, that is all we have for this episode of Reality Check, when we talk about addition and not subtraction for dieting success.